Hello and welcome. Today we're going to continue with Nat and Fizz's adventure in Emerald's Secret, the second book in my Nat Walker Trilogy for kids and everyone who loves adventure. We left Nat newly installed at Boxbury boarding school, where she'd just been chatting to her kind of new friend Zixin about the possibility of being able to escape without being noticed. And also there's the threatening invitation from Baroness Ivy Shiversand for another tea at Shiversand Towers. And we're going to begin with chapter 30, Escape. Nat brushed her teeth, scowled at Charlotte and Phoebe, put a blanket over Goby's cage, climbed into bed, and flicked off her bedside lamp. Fizz curled up next to her on the thin foam pillow. Supper had been interesting. Baked beans on toast. It had tasted like cardboard with tomato sauce. She'd ask our Ping to bring her noodles tomorrow so that she wouldn't starve. Limpet had checked in on her during supper. When Nat complained about Ivy's invitation, he'd said that Ivy wanted to make amends and that Nat should go to tea just this once. Then it had been prep in the dorms for an hour, during which time she'd messaged with Wen and Henry, bringing them up to date on all the news. Henry was about to leave for the airport with Uncle Fergal, Aunt Vera and Prissy. He said his family was a nightmare and that his mum had been out and brought a whole new wardrobe from Shanksy. Now Nat was in bed. All she had to do was wait for the others to fall asleep. After what seemed like forever, the whispering finally stopped and she heard the girls breathing slow. She slid out of bed, stuffed her uniform under the duvet, making it into the shape of her body, and tiptoed into the corridor. "They're meeting us at the dorm door," whispered Fizz. There was a clicking sound and the door unlatched and opened. Zixin was standing there with Vesperetta slung around his neck like a scarf. In his hand, he held a magic eye card that contained the retinal scan bypasser program that he'd built. They moved downstairs, silent like ninjas, and exited the building through the kitchen back door, coming out into a side street where a groove cab was waiting for them. They hopped in and sped off towards the city. "Coup work," said Nat. "You could sell that retinal scan program for a fortune." "Nah, rather keep it for myself," said Zixin. "I like the exclusivity of it." "Thanks for helping me," she said. He shrugged. "Figured you need a friend. Besides, I want to see what your secret lab gaff's all about." Leadenhall was deserted. The outside chairs were stacked up and chained on top of the tables. She ran up to the cafe door and rang the old-fashioned bell. The yellow Space Invader bot from behind the counter activated and walked over to the door. "We are closed," it said. "It's Nat Walker. Philippe's expecting me." The robot reached up and unbolted the door. As Nat passed it, it began to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star softly. Nat stopped and looked into the bot's black, shiny eyes. She felt as if there were a window into the past. Images from the films and photos of her dead parents flashed through her mind, sailing on the Junco, in the streets of Hong Kong, in her dad's old office at Spin headquarters, on board the Spinjet, on Golden Gate Bridge. Her mind stuck on that old photo, the one that Fizz had taken of her as a tiny baby in her mum's arms, sitting on her grandpa's terrace in San Francisco. It was her first and only trip there, back to her mum's hometown, to be shown off. Her family all gone now, but her. Nat, we should get inside, said Zixen. She tore her eyes away from the invader bot. Yes, sorry. With the door closed behind them, the smell of the coffee beans was overpowering. The mirrored door behind the counter sprang open. A mange-tout came waddling out. Greetings, but you were meant to come alone. This is Zixen. I trust him, so you'll have to as well. Mange-tout waddled over to him and scanned him up and down. No weapons, one robotic snake. Philippe says you can come in. Follow me. They went through to the kitchen. Your wing's fixed, said Nat. I'm very sorry I broke it. Apology accepted. I am repaired and gave myself a flaptastic upgrade. Observe! It flew high up into the air, nearly hitting the roof. Tiger's teeth, that is a ding upgrade, said Nat, as she opened the door to the fridge and stepped inside. Wow, said Zixen. Glad I came along for the ride. Mange-tout took them straight through the old lab, in through the Space Invader console and down into the sloping tunnel. Zixen stared around in amazement. My old man'd get such a kick out of this. He says he knows every tunnel in London from his work on the underground, but I bet he doesn't know this one. He whistled when they emerged into the Black Cod lab. Ah, bonsoir, Nathalie et Fizz, said Philippe, looking up from the console desk. He held out his hand to Zixen. Nice to meet you, Zixen Smith. I have seen some of your work on the Acker belt. It is most impressive. Zixen gulped. How do you know me? Philippe shrugged. I ran a facial recognition program the moment you entered being invaders. I just wouldn't let anyone in. I run Ackerbelt so I can harvest code that is useful. Yours has been and still is used here. Your verification cutter helped me accelerate the Black Code development by many months. You have a genius mind, not unlike mine. You have good taste in friends, Natalie. Zixen grinned, and his tongue shot out, flicking up and down. Philippe turned to Nat. Now, I believe we must hurry, Nat, if Natalie intends to go into Black Code one more time. Chapter 31. Eruption. This time the marketplace was deserted. All the stalls were gone, as were the witches and elves. Nat was standing in the centre where the ring in which she'd fought the troll had been. Now it was just a wide cobbled square, lit by 2 flame lamps that burned up into the night sky. Nat stood absorbing the silence and warm air. It all felt so real. Normally virtual reality was more dreamlike than this. It had an otherness to it that reminded her she was only in it temporarily for the gameplay. But this was different. It was a whole new level of virtual world, more real than real. Zoinks! Something started moving about in the book, scrabbling and scratching to get out. Keeping the cover closed, she carefully eased it out from under her arm. The scrabbling was making the book shake. She lifted the cover a tiny bit, and long tips of claws came shooting out, followed by a gold scaly nose. Pushing her hand out of the way, the cover popped open. Finally, I can see, said a miniature version of Fizz. The golden egg was split open and lay empty in the bottom of the book. Did you hatch? The little dragon looked back inside. Yes, it was very uncomfortable. I guess this is my virtual rebirth. I preferred it when I was as big as you. Why is the boat in here? She shrugged. Not a clue. Fizz held his miniature snout in the air. "It smells like sulphur." Nat sniffed. There was a faint odour of bad eggs. It was like being back in Wen's granny's flat in Hong Kong. A cracking sound, like a bullet ripping through the air, went off behind them. She jumped in fright. One of the cobbles had blown up into the night sky, and hissing steam was shooting out of the gap left in the ground. The cobbles beneath Nat's feet began to vibrate, and a deep rumbling sound like a waking giant was followed by more cracking and popping explosions. Cobbles were firing up into the air all around. Steam whistled and hissed. Nat took off, running like the wind across the square. Fizz leapt up and hooked himself around her neck. She grabbed the canoe in her hand, dropping the empty book to the ground as she ran. "You're strangling me," she shouted, jumping over erupting steam vents. "Sorry," he said, loosening his grip. She was close to the square's edge now. A high stone wall surrounded it. There was no gate or door anywhere in sight, and a sudden flash of light behind her, followed by an intense blast of white-hot desert heat, brought her to a halt. "Hi-ya! It's a volcano!" I think we're going to end mid-chapter there. A very exciting stopping point. The prospect of a volcano erupting as Nat and Fizz are in the virtual world of Black Cod. I wonder what will happen next. We shall find out more tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Stay well. Bye-bye.